we're now talking about how we can plant saltbush through outback Australia, which might actually help us with our greenhouse targets. This whole thing has distracted us from the basics. If you were running NATO, wouldn't the first thing you'd do is say, how do I ensure the sovereignty of, say, the whole of the northern Atlantic area? How would I ensure that Europe is safe? Power supply, water supply, the ability to feed you. Wouldn't they be the kind of basics you do, Lisa? And yet they've allowed themselves to be geared in the way Bronwyn has described, where everything they buy is money back to Russia. We've had exactly the same relationship with countries like China. I can't criticise China and Russia for looking after their own interests. We just haven't looked after our own.
Well, it's as Bronwyn said, they've been smart and they're being very strategic, and we are, plain and simple, being stupid. We have all the resources. We're quite happy to ship them offshore, but God forbid we would use them here in our own country. We have to demonise them and say no more. And I found it very ironic the other week when you had Matt Keane having to do this giant backflip, and suddenly coal was bad, and then suddenly pleading, please turn on the coal-fired power stations again because we desperately need you. So coal was our friend suddenly. But look, it is absolute madness. And if you're going to talk about the salt bushes and how you're going to try and capture carbon, you need to make sure that, like I said before, that we're going to have the energy there to keep the lights on to start with. They want to cut $2,000 off the price of an EV. Well, that's great. How many families in this country, when they're battling, the grocery bills and the interest rates that are going up, if their mortgages or rents are going up, that they're worried about being able to afford an electric vehicle, and then you go and you plug it in. Hello, I'm pretty sure you're plugging it into power that's being run by baseload power. Back to that nasty coal and gas.
Yeah, no, this is the dirty little secret. Coal-fired power is driving electric vehicles all around the country. How can we actually... How do we actually reach this point? It's so invasive in the school system where kids are not allowed to question it, corporations are not allowed to question it. Everybody has gone completely woke. Groupthink is just ripe and rich everywhere you turn. Anyone who says something contrary, like, me, you get piled on. Ev, how do we break out of this?
I think we need to take a serious look at our national curriculum. One thing this last coalition government should have tackled is the national curriculum and the cross-curriculum priorities, which means that Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander histories, sustainability and Australia's engagement with Asia needs to be part of every single subject. And having sustainability in there has given activist teachers licence to scare kids to death, to scare kids into thinking that there's going to be some sort of climate catastrophe in 10 years, and send kids onto the street. We need to get serious about the activism going on in our schools that is warping young minds into thinking that it's going to be the end of the world when we know that it's not. And we've had these predictions from the UN and other bodies for over 50 years now that have never come to pass. We should be teaching that as well. We should be teaching Australian history properly. We should be teaching kids to be proud of our history. I mean, in the national curriculum at the moment, kids are taught about the invasion of Australia and the Indigenous heritage prior to learning about the great discovery from Captain Cook or the British gentleman as well. So we're learnt to apologise for Australia before kids are actually taught about how to be proud of Australia. Now, we know that over 80% of Australians are proud to be Australian, but unfortunately that kind of national pride is not being passed on to the next generation.